Welcome to the Happy Doc, the voice of fulfilled physicians. This show is about bringing inspirational, creative, successful, and happy health professionals to you. Get ready to learn how you can be a happy doctor too. What's up, Happy Doc team? I'm absolutely excited, ecstatic, exuberant, exalted. I don't know what words we need to use here, but that's how excited I am for this next guest, and that is Dr. Pamela Wible. Dr. Pamela Wible is a family physician in Eugene, Oregon, and founder of Ideal Medical Care, a family practice model designed by patients and for patients. She has one mission: to bring the humanity back to the healing profession. She spreads her uplifting, humanizing, and transformative messages of ideal medical care through a variety of mediums and has been featured on NPR, TEDMED, TED Talks, ABC News, CNN, and Washington Post. She has authored 2 books, Pet Goats and Pap Smears, 101 Medical Adventures to Open Your Heart and Mind, and Physician Suicide Letters, rated a #1 Amazon bestseller in medicine and psychology. Dr. Pamela Wible is a leader of a revolutionary but simple mission: to heal the healers. It is by living out this dream she undoubtedly is healing the masses. My call to action for this week is for everyone listening to support Pamela's latest work in the Do No Harm documentary, where we learn about doctors who take their own lives and the systemic issues that are causing it. I ask each listener to go onto Kickstarter and pledge at least $1. Search Do No Harm or find the link on www.thehappydoc.com/Pamela Wible. So, without further ado, our next awesome guest, Dr. Pamela Wible. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone, and this is another episode of the Happy Doc. I am really excited to have our next guest. She is absolutely amazing. I'm sure you've heard of her, and that is Dr. Pamela Wible. And before she says anything, I do want to give a little bit about a personal experience I had. I was having a tough time in my 4th year of medical school, and I was really down, and I was exhausted, and I took the time to look up some people that could help me. And I looked up Pamela Wible on her Ideal Medical Care website, and I just sent a message. I didn't think anything about it. And all of a sudden, randomly, maybe I think a few days later, I'm on rotation, and I get a call from Eugene, Oregon. And I'm like, who is this? And it's Dr. Pamela Wible on the phone with me. And we spoke for an hour, and I shared my thoughts and my feelings. And I just have to say, at the beginning, thank you so much for being there for people. I think it's absolutely amazing that you are an individual who's a practicing physician. You practice what you preach. And at the same time, I'm just this student that you didn't even know, and you gave the time to really help me out. So thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. And I have to say, I'm so proud of being able to watch you blossom in the world and see what's happened to you since that conversation.
I know it's been crazy, and I'm sure we'll dig into kind of the retreat experience and everything that's going on. But it's been a great process to go from that moment to really taking action in my life. So with that being said, Dr. Pamela Wible, I wanted to ask you as a starter question, why did you choose medicine, and what got you inspired to go into this field?
Well, I feel like I decided to do this before I was born. I was born into a family of physicians. Both my parents are physicians. My dad's a pathologist. My mom's a psychiatrist. And so as a child, I pretty much, followed them around at work because they were workaholics and they spent more time at work than at home. So in order for me to have sort of a normal bonding experience with my parents, I had to go to work with them. And I ended up falling in love with this profession because I saw how in a moment in time, you could literally change someone's trajectory in life by being there at that vulnerable moment, whether it's a physical diagnosis or some sort of major death in the family. I just saw my parents intervening in people's lives in a way that made immense difference. And it was just transformative. I was addicted. I think I was addicted to the whole thing.
Well, if of the spectrum of addictions, I think helping people is a good thing to be addicted about.
Yeah.
I think personally. So that's awesome that you have an addiction for helping people. I want to take a snapshot or a moment in time. I know that you have definitely had some difficulties in your life going through this process of training, which has obviously transformed into you being this spokesperson for healing within the medical culture. So can you give us a picture of that really difficult time in your life and that moment of change, or that moment of change in mindset that really allowed you to take on your own ideal medical care system and then bringing that about into the culture of medicine?
Well, I think like many pre-med and medical students, I am an idealistic humanitarian by nature, and having witnessed medicine in its heyday by wandering around with my parents at work, I had this like sort of, I guess, even grandiose idea of how I could be a healer in the world. And what came as an absolute shock to my system was the way that I was treated in my first year of medical school, where it became quite obvious through this, patriarchal reductionist medical model that it was our way or the highway, and emotions and your heart and soul aren't welcomed here, but we do want to see you have good board scores. So I just felt completely devalued for the contributions that I had always planned to make in the world. And it was, it brought me to the deepest state of depression I had ever been in my life. As an indication of how serious that was. I don't think I've ever cried so much in my entire life as I did my first year in medical school. And one day I cried so much that literally I woke up and my eyes were sealed shut. Like I actually couldn't see anything, and I had to feel my way to the bathroom. I haven't cried that much when family members have died and that I loved, right? I have not cried this much for anything else. And I think that was coming from a feeling that I felt like my soul was being removed from my body, and it was a terrible, terrible feeling and depression. And so I kept a lot of notes at that time. I realized that wow, this is really strange. This is totally out of alignment with the values that I have. And I've got to, I felt like at the time I've got to do something about this, but now's not the time because I've got to study for a test tomorrow, So I guess I just put it on hold, knowing that something's not right here. And then I think the dog labs, which are hopefully not happening at any schools any longer, but were the norm in my day. And this was 1990. We were supposed to murder a dog, and watch its EKG go from normal to flatline, and it's this crazy thing we were supposed to do in physiology lab. And I stated that I wasn't going to do it. I was vegan at the time and totally, it was ridiculous. Nuts. And everyone in our school had to do this in order to make it to second year medical school. So right then and there, I was like, this is bizarre. I didn't even understand. There was a disconnect between healing and medical education. Medical education did not fit in with my conception of healing. Why would you have murder in the curriculum when you're teaching people to have empathy and love for the vulnerable and, to help others? So that was when my depression started. And then as we got more into the clinical years, I was great. I'm a total people person, as you might have figured out by now. And I loved residency. It was super awesome because I was actually getting to do the job of a doctor, and be with people. And then the next crisis came about maybe a decade into practicing medicine when I realized after trying, 6 jobs in 10 years, that pretty much my only value as a physician in the United States felt like as a revenue generating robot for corporate medicine in 7-minute increments, and if I wasn't willing to just, do a good job in 7 minutes and document everything and bill at a higher level than I actually, provided treatment, then I was not considered a good doctor in the United States. And it just, again, crushed my soul and brought me, the only thing that dug me out of that first year of medical school, that depression, is this vision that I had for my future. So when my future vision was crushed by the reality of what it's like to practice what I call assembly line medicine, I felt like I was adrift and there was no reason to be alive. I just lost all hope and became suicidal at that time. So that was,
Wow. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just amazing to see how you went through this entire process. You explained that you've kind of lost your soul, and yet you shifted that into almost a fuel or a way to really connect with people who have reached those places. And obviously, like, you're known as like the suicide physician, you're the expert in that field, and that these people are reaching out to you. And something I really wanted to learn from you is you have all of these people reaching out to you at their deepest and darkest moments. How do you handle those situations, and what are some of the transformative experiences that you've seen along
Okay,
that
well, I
path?
first want to correct you by saying, like, I didn't lose my soul. I felt like they were trying to slaughter my soul in medical education, but I held on to it. And the way that I did that, by the way, is to continue crying and feeling. I refused to get numb. I know they wanted me to become numb, and I couldn't allow myself to stop crying because I felt like the moment I stopped crying, they would win. Right. And I was not willing to let go of my soul. So I actually graduated medical school with my soul pretty much intact, with the scars, of having witnessed what I saw, which was horrifying. But as a result, I think that I have, like most people who've survived some trauma, you have great empathy for others who might be in similar traumatic situations. So I felt like, first of all, I had no idea that so many other people were suicidal and were really as depressed as I was in medical school, since nobody showed it. And all physicians in their white coats are walking around with their, little smiles on their face. You don't see it from the outside. You cannot see these scars. But what happened is I started, after we lost our third physician in my town to suicide in 18 months. And by the way, both men I dated in medical school died by suicide, not in medical school, but after medical school. One was 39, one was 44. The thing is, and they left, children behind and all of that. Like, once I started realizing, wow, like, I can't believe how many doctors I know personally who've died by suicide. And I started writing about this and my experiences as a suicidal physician. Then it started in 2012 when I started my first blog on this topic. Like, the floodgates opened, and it seemed like everyone and their brother was writing me about their suicidal thoughts in medical school. So it had been taboo up until that moment. And then somehow, and I had a blog like since, for a year before, and I'd written all sorts of blogs that maybe I get one comment, or, what it's like when you first start in social media, you get one person that reads or one person likes it. But then all of a sudden I did this article on physician suicide, and there were like 80 comments and all these letters. And so I guess I just felt like this was something I was supposed to do, like a calling or something.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely hit what the culture needed, and people responded to that. And it's still a thing. It's still definitely a thing that we're working on. And I'm just really excited and proud to have you here today, because it's going to be great for us to continue learning. And obviously this is a process, but it's great to learn from you. So within, those times that you're working with, all of these physicians, obviously I know you work with so many of them. One of the things I want to talk about with you are the weaknesses, or the blind spots that physicians commonly have, and how we might start to work on those. What are some of those common themes of, the blind spots, the weaknesses in these physicians, and how can we make changes?
I think there's a certain personality that a gifted existential thinker, idealistic humanitarian has. These are the people that are entering medical school, and even the people that don't seem too idealistic on their way in, somewhere inside, they have to have that humanitarian spirit, or they would not, there's easier ways to make money than go to medical school. So I think all of us really want to serve and want to heal and help. And so by being these, overachieving valedictorians who are used to being, the top of the class, I think we don't see ourselves as needing as much as other people, because we're not like the slow kid in the back of the room, right? Like, we haven't needed to ask for as much help with academics our whole life. We haven't needed to we are the ones actually helping others in the class as tutors and study guides and all of that. So I think we have an underdeveloped skill that we need to start honing now, which is asking for help. We are not good at asking for help, and we're good at sort of isolating in a leadership position. And what happens in medical school is they throw us all in together and say, you're nothing special, good luck. You know what I mean? So right then and there, like your whole vision of who you are in the world is broken. And you sort of don't know who you like where you fit in anymore. And you're also not good at asking for help. So I think the blind spot is that we suffer silently, and we stay in denial for way too long individually. Like we don't even recognize that we're suffering until it gets out of hand. So I really, really believe that we should start bonding with each other as brothers and sisters in medicine, asking for help, sharing our stories. You know, I don't think I even answered your previous question, which is how do I handle all these phone calls that are so terrible? But, you know, how I handle them is I just listen to them. And then I recognize my shared humanity with the person on the phone. And I let them know that they're having the normal reaction that anyone would have to sort of a sick medical education system. I think we can all agree that we can do better in our medical education system than we're doing now. And so.
And something that comes to me as you're just saying that is, I think of all of those physicians and people out there who have justified their situation. And so they have lost kind of their humanity. And then when, you know, someone's reaching out for help and you're reaching out to get help from someone who's lost that, I mean, that's like the worst situation, right? Like now you're not getting that shared humanity, and these people might be lost in those times. And I'm, again, really excited that, you know, you're building out part of this culture where we are talking about the issues. You know, it's never been more prevalent. So it's really an exciting time for people to have the possibilities, you know, to start to connect. Speaking about like ideals and everything, obviously you've said that the culture we have currently is not the way things need to be. Have you personally started to develop your own ideal medical school or ideal medical system, and what would that look like?
Well, the foundation would be certainly holistic and inclusive of all healing modalities, and not just reductionist, allopathic medicine, right? I mean, embracing osteopathic medicine, embracing even, acupuncture and mind-body medicine, all these different types of healing modalities that have been around for centuries and have been discarded because I guess they're not easily reimbursed and they don't have the, medical pyrotechnics that like all the cool stuff that we're discovering and allopathic medicine has, right? So I would embrace everyone. So it would be inclusive, kind of like your theme for your podcast. Nobody is excluded. Everyone is welcomed, right? And then also we need to use modern teaching techniques. When you take a gifted child who is already highly sensitive and self-motivated, teaching them by terror is counterproductive. You know what I mean? Because they're already wanting to learn. You don't need to scare them into learning or hit them or terrorize them. So I think motivating people with, rewards and positivity versus this whole pimping, fear-based educational system. Oh, the third thing I want to say, so all-inclusive, no fear-based teaching, and I really do believe that medical students should design their own medical schools, kind of like how I'm sure we'll talk about later, patients should design their own medical clinics that would really serve them at the level they want to be served.
Yeah, definitely. And I was actually going to bring that up. I personally had gone to your Live Your Dream retreat and taken your course. And one of the main things we talk about and, we discussed in that was bringing out your personal dream and how you see that fitting in your life. And it's very different from having a standardized model and then you have to fit in this box. And I wanted to bring up, in your retreat, you're asking these people to reveal their dreams and figure out ways to kind of bring that into life. Can you give us some of those examples and what you've seen through your retreat and your course?
Well, I believe that many people decided that medicine was their career at an early age, similar to me. I've met a lot of people who knew when they were 5 or 6 years old, they wanted to do this, or even in high school, maybe they went on a mission trip and had an amazing experience. And so I think some of those experiences that are the inspiration for even applying to medical school need to be embraced later in life after medical school graduation. If you forget why you were inspired to do this, you're likely to have a very unfulfilling medical career. And so I think we all need to get back to that original seed, the child that we cared for, in an impoverished village in Africa, the homeless man that we treated at a homeless shelter, the, child that we, helped at an emergency room, even by witnessing as a scribe what was going on. We have been impacted by certain things that we've experienced, and we need to allow people to develop in medical school on personalized tracks that they could then follow into the future to basically live the personal statements that they so meticulously crafted on their way in. And so all I'm doing in this Live Your Dream retreat scenario is reminding people who they really are and encouraging them to go inside and find their own answers, and then giving them like the business strategies that they need to really, make money, practicing in alignment with your values and serving people at the highest level.
Yeah, definitely. And, there was something really beautiful about that retreat specifically, at least for me. And I'm so happy I went as early as I did. I know a lot of people there are already practicing physicians or they're residents, but it was so interesting for me to hear all of the stories. And as you know, like, you're listening to all of these broken people and these stories, but there was also something really healing in that, right? Where these people were broken, and then you're also feeling kind of broken, but together you at least know that it's a common theme, and then you're normalizing it. Like, you realize like things are messed up and you want to make change. So I think it's really incredible. But then also the shared experience of having healing as a group and coming together and sharing having a community to share who you really are, is really amazing. So, coming out of that retreat, I know you have a lot of like people who are very successful and are able to build out some of their ideal medical care systems. Can you give us some examples of some of the unique things that people are doing after coming out of your retreat and what they've been building?
Well, I love watching people like, for example, Lisa Lubinsky, who's in Port Angeles, Washington. She's a pretty introverted, kind of a sweet young mother. She has like 2 little kids and, doesn't feel like she has any business sense and, is unsure of herself being able to be successfully self-employed. And she actually followed just step by step the method that I laid out in the teleseminar that preceded the retreat. And she did the town hall meetings, which is kind of one of the central tenets that I like to propose that people try, is just ask people what they want in community and see how you can serve your community, especially as a family doctor or primary care. That makes total sense. Well, she had a town hall meeting and 52 people showed up to her town hall meeting. And I was just blown away because that is more than I've ever had or anyone else. And to see somebody really believe in themselves and open the door of having faith in your community and seeing just who will walk through the door, to have 52 people show up and rally around you in a small town in Washington state and help you build this dream clinic is fabulous. And she did follow-up meetings after that. And she's now launched her practice, I think, the 3rd week of June this year. And she's really successful. And all sorts of people are, doing the, they're paying her cash outside of the insurance system, just some reasonable, maybe, I forget what it is, $75 a month or something to be able to see her. And she is just blown away that people value her so much and have supported her dream. And I think that's the beautiful thing about living your dream, is you'll find that your dream is also the person next to you has the same dream. And so we all there's a limited number of dreams out there, right? So they're likely to overlap. And when you share your dream, you will naturally attract other people who are willing to support you emotionally, spiritually, financially, in all sorts of ways Another example is like Mary Ellen Hoffman in New York State, who, wanted to open her practice after the retreat, and a neighbor came by and gave her like $100,000 check with a plate of cookies, to help her launch her practice. And so these are the beautiful experiences that we're missing when we go into medicine in an isolated state of mind. You are missing the experience of having your community support you and build the clinic around you, with you. You are missing the experience of the sweet little old lady down the street bringing you a $100,000 check to ensure your success, and a plate of cookies. And so I would like medical students and pre-medical students and all physicians out there to please invite others into your lives as a, as something that you just do naturally every day, share your story, be vulnerable, tell people your dreams. You never know who you're going to be standing next to in the elevator. It could be somebody who wants to help your dream come true.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And I can speak to that personally, and I'm sure you have so many examples of that, right? Where as soon as people kind of just decided what their dream was and what they wanted to work on, everything kind of just unfolded and unraveled from there. And, for me, coming out of, the experience of the retreat, I was like, you know what, I'm going to make some changes now. And so I decided to launch like a website, and I hosted some classes, and I got to do some like group sessions. And then through that, like this podcast came about. So it's just, it's amazing how when you just believe in something and keep talking about it, people will offer their services. It's really great. A follow-up question to this is, how do you deal with like the naysayers who don't believe in what you're doing? How do you deal with the criticism? And what is the response that you give to them, and what do you show them?
Well, it's really funny because my dad, actually, one of our later conversations before he passed away, he sort of assumed that I was getting hate mail for what I was doing. And I just have to say, I think maybe 1 or 2 letters of disbelief have I received, but I haven't basically received hate mail much at all. And if there are naysayers out there, they're being awfully quiet because I don't feel like I'm interacting with them much. I guess they don't reach out for help. If they're naysayers, they're probably not the ones on the phone with me like you, right? So I think when you open your heart and soul and you're living your dream, you naturally attract other people who would like to live their dreams too, right? So you don't attract the people who are naysayers. And if there are naysayers, which, every so often online, on Facebook or whatever, you can read, negative people trolling or whatever, like, I don't know. It just doesn't stick. It's nothing I really think about. So I let it roll off my shoulder, I guess you could say.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's great. I mean, and you're a very positive influence, and I'm sure a lot of the positive feedback you're getting and all the things you're doing, you don't even have time to really indulge that stuff anyways. So I don't know, that makes a lot of sense to me. One thing I wanted to discuss as well is, recently, I've been seeing all this stuff on Facebook and social media in terms of the Do No Harm documentary. And I definitely wanted us to discuss that a little bit. Can you give us a taste of kind of what happened, or what the topic is, what we're digging into into that documentary, and how we might get more involved and help out?
So, a filmmaker had cold called me about 2 years ago wanting to do a documentary on physician suicide, and she had seen I was all over the place through this blog. Another example of putting your information out there and having random people, cold call you. I end up, basically helping this filmmaker connect with individuals and families who have had suicide attempts or lost children to suicide in medical school. And we have this beautiful film that should be finished this October. She'll be done with the final, and then it goes into the film festivals and goes through a certain process that like major documentaries go through. And then at some point, hopefully there'll be a theatrical release, and it will be used as a teaching tool in all medical schools and residencies and hospitals all over the country and in other countries. So how people can get involved is, right now we have a Kickstarter campaign, and you can go, to Do No Harm in the Kickstarter campaign. And if you'd like to pledge, like even what I would recommend, I don't know when this podcast is going to actually air, but if it airs before July 27th, you can
it
pledge.
Will.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I would recommend that everyone out there listening to this pledge at least $1. I know like everyone has $1 because that gets you sort of on the email list of advanced notices of when the film actually is playing and when it will come to a school near you. And so, I mean, if you can pledge more than that, that's awesome. But at least $1, you're in, and you'll be part of like the grassroots movement around this film, which really is very revolutionary because it doesn't talk about, first of all, physician suicide and medical student suicide has been a taboo topic for a very long time. And, I mean, physician suicide was first discussed in 1858 in England when it was published in some sort of a journal article. And there hasn't been a whole lot of action like on doing something about this, which is very disconcerting to me. So I think this film basically takes a taboo topic and puts it into the spotlight of a big screen, you know, and from there, we are smart enough to solve this. It's not like this is a tough problem to solve. I think hiding any problem and not telling the truth makes it impossible to do anything. I hope I answered your question, but I would love for people to all get involved with the film in some way, and to recommend that your medical school bring it, you know, to the med school, and we can come by and do screenings. I'm planning on just going on a film tour all next year and trying to take this film to, you know, all the med schools and conferences and start the conversation that's been 150 years too late.
Absolutely. And Pamela, this comes to mind now is, you know, if any student or maybe they're on the president of their council at their school and anything is listening to this, how can they reach out to you to make sure that they can share the great resources you're providing?
Well, everyone should just reach out to me through idealmedicalcare.org, sort of like how Taylor did, and you'll end up on the phone with me if you want for like up to an hour, or maybe you'll just get an email from me. I mean, I could put you, I don't know, on my email list if you want. You could be my Facebook friend, you know. But basically, I would say I'm highly accessible, and I am frequently, you know, on the phone with medical students who are suffering, residents who've had work hour, you know, issues going on where they're in violation and they're not getting help they need, legal, you know, various people who are in legal problems, program directors that are malignant, you know, and also I hear about good schools, good medical schools that are awesome, and people want to share with me like how much fun they're having in their programs. So I don't always hear, you know, the bad news. And I think we need to, like, through your podcast, showcase what's working, right? That's a really inspiring way of doing things instead of constantly talking about what's not working. But I just throw out my website, idealmedicalcare.org, because, like, I guess once you're friends with me, you sort of can never get rid of me unless you want to opt out of being friends with me. And I'm fine with that too. So yeah, I'm here and totally available if you need to talk, including I've been on the phone a lot with parents of medical students who know their medical students are suffering and they don't know how to interact with them. And they're very concerned that they could, you know, be suicidal, and what should they do? And so yeah, I'm open to anyone who wants to talk.
And yeah, I want to echo what you just said there, because I think a lot of, like, as you said earlier, students aren't asking for help. There's so many silent sufferers, as you were saying, and it's really not a big deal. Like, I know you're going through a tough time, but, you know, send a message and you'll be pleasantly surprised how one really amazing conversation can make a huge change. So I really appreciate, you know, you leaving that, you know, information out there for people to reach out to you. It's awesome. And I've personally experienced the changes within myself from having a beautiful conversation and, you know, just digging through some of the issues I'm having. And I know people can change through that. One thing that, you know, I was reminded of that I wanted to ask is, what's something that, you know, whether you're a medical student, a resident, or maybe we can talk about this at different levels, a medical student, a resident, an attending physician, what are some things that we can take charge of today to really make changes in our lives and make sure that, you know, we're not suffering, to make sure that we can be happier in our daily, you know, lives as physicians, even within the current mainstream medicine that we have?
I think it's important for everyone to take time to themselves sometime during the week, and whether this is like going to church, praying, meditating in the evenings, I think it's really important that we center ourselves and understand what our dreams are, because they change throughout your lifetime, right? And so if you don't know what your dream is, it's probably not going to come true. Okay. If you live in a constant state of fear-based decision-making, which sort of starts with the fear-based educational system that we get immersed in on day one of medical school, that could go on your entire life. And I think people who are more successful in life, who are more likely to reach their dreams, are people who are focusing on their desires and not their fears. So they're making desire-based decisions, which I have heard only 10% or less of people in the world make decisions based on desire. 90% of the planet is running away from something with their decisions. I mean, everything from where they live, what job they accept, how they raise their children. They're using fear-driven decision making. And so I would like to encourage everyone to focus on their desires, even if it's just 30 minutes on Sundays. What is it that you really want out of your life? Because once you decide what you want, believe me, we're smart enough and resourceful enough to create it as human beings. And it's amazing living in the United States. We really can create whatever business we want overnight. We really can create all sorts of interesting ways of delivering healthcare to people in our communities. And it's just a matter of opening your heart and mind to the idea that you deserve to be happy and you actually deserve for your dreams to come true. This isn't something that you just tell 5-year-olds, when they're blowing out the candles on their birthday cake. This is something that adults can do too.
Yeah. Wow. I love that tip. And I hope the listeners, really, really take that in. Something that I definitely wanted to ask you within this conversation, we can talk about a lot of the things that you're succeeding in terms of, the documentary and the people you're helping and all of that. But you mentioned, and I was listening to your speech at Loyola for the commencement, and you're talking about those times where you're disinvited, where you're going to speak somewhere, or you're going to present, and then all of a sudden, they took that away from you. Why do you think that is? What is it about your theme and your message that is causing you to be disinvited from places?
Okay, well, that's really only happened once with the American Medical Association, which is pretty interesting. It was, I'll just give the backstory on this because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So I was invited to be a TEDMED speaker and to speak on physician suicide. I embraced that invitation and was preparing for my talk. And apparently the AMA every year will invite 3 people who are delivering their TEDMED talks to come to an invitation-only gathering of all the bigwigs in Chicago healthcare scene to deliver their TEDMED talk in advance of the actual real TEDMED event. So they get like a preview, right? And I was one of 3 people that were invited, and I was extremely honored and happy on the phone with them. We were making plane reservations, getting the hotel, moving forward with this until they figured out that I was speaking on physician suicide, because apparently it was unclear from my sort of happy, radiant bio picture with the description of Ideal Clinics. I think they thought I was probably going to speak more on Ideal Clinics. And so once they realized that my talk was on physician suicide, I did tell them I was happy to, speak more on Ideal Clinics or change my presentation for them, but apparently that wasn't allowed. You had to keep to the word by word, TEDMED talk. So they made it known that they were uncomfortable with the topic of physician suicide and that I was disinvited. And that's our leadership of, our medical education, that's physician leadership right there for you. So what I get from that is there is a disconnect between on the ground, what's happening and what we need as medical students, residents, and physicians, and our leadership and what they're delivering to us. Taylor, just surprisingly, when I learned that I was disinvited, I wasn't necessarily in any sort of state of despair about it. I thought I was really sad for the American Medical Association that that's their stance. And I felt sad for our profession and how long it will take us to make progress if this is the attitude that our leaders have. But I was going to keep propelling myself forward with this message, and it wasn't going to slow me down at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think we can all take as an example, from you is, Easily for someone else, that could have been like, what? They don't accept my ideas. This is terrible. But you were like, no, screw this. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to keep pushing forward. And that is also a theme that I'm hearing from lots of doctors who are doing great things is this just, and I hate the term resilience, by the way, I'm sure you know, but like the resilience to believe in your dream and keep pushing forward no matter what other people are saying. And you're definitely a good example of that. Since this podcast is about fulfillment and happiness, could you go back into your memory banks and think of a time where you were truly fulfilled, a truly fulfilling moment in your career? What was something that was really beautiful to happen? And could you share that with us?
Well, there are probably a lot of things I could share, and some of them are a little bit edgy. And I would say that it was in, the first few years of having my ideal clinic open, the amazing things that I was able to do for patients when I really just, for example, that I had, our first hour conversation was amazing, I guess. It was great for us to be able to connect as real human beings, for me to share things with you that could improve your life, for me to hear what was going on with you and have insight into your life. But imagine if we had had that live in person at a doctor's visit, and that we would have a continuing relationship where I would do house calls and bend over backwards and do anything for you, physically, emotionally, spiritually, within the realm of my comfort level as a human being on this planet. I literally will do anything for people as a healer, not just, prescribe antibiotics or strep throat, but literally some of the things that I've done is I have followed patients to their consultant visits to make sure everything goes well with their biopsies, with their, follow with their appointments with specialists. I have gone with a patient. I won't give all the details. This is kind of one of my more favorite stories, and I do have her permission to share this, but I can't give too much detail. But I had a patient who was wanting to be sexually active, was very scared of having sex. And she was like, she wanted to have kids, and she was in her later 20s, and she just had anxiety about feeling unsafe with men and this, that, and the other thing. I mean, we got to the point where I literally went with her, sort of on a date almost. I literally went, and not only that, it's the wildest story, which I probably can't reveal online, but just put it this way. Sure. I helped this woman lose her virginity. Okay. And I did that as part of my job of being a doctor and helping somebody who wanted to have a child and not be afraid of men anymore. Okay. Wow.
Well, folks, I think I just heard the statement from the world's greatest doctor right here. So no, but seriously, that's amazing. And that's so cool, and that's something I want the listeners to get too, is when you create your own business or ideal medical care system, you can do whatever you want. You have full reign and control, which can be really scary for people who haven't experienced that. But you, as you said, you're the type of person that your dream and your spirit is to give as much as you can to other people. And you're doing that. And I'm sure, as again, you get so much energy from that. And it's really great, to hear, that from you. So obviously you're an inspiration, and I'm sure as people are listening to this, they're going to get that out of this conversation. You're an inspiration to me, you're an inspiration to many people. But I want to know who inspires you. Who are the people you learn from? Who are the people that you look up to, and why?
Well, I can say that I am so inspired by talking to residents and physicians who are keeping such a positive attitude despite their sometimes inhumane working conditions. I am amazed that, and I can't list their names just because of, I don't have their permission, but I just got off the phone with a neurosurgery resident who literally is being bullied, sexually harassed, and mistreated in a variety of ways. And she has not lost her passion for neurosurgery. And she embraces these parents who've lost their children to, car accidents, whatever it is. She is doing an amazing job as a neurosurgery resident and has the best attitude despite being in a situation that most people would probably want to jump off a roof. Okay. And so I am amazed at how, and I hate that word, resilience, just because of the way it's used against us by systems, but I am amazed at how many physicians can actually survive this with their souls intact and be amazing healers okay, so that just floors me like every day. But as far as other inspiration, of course, my parents, because I went to work with them when I was little and I saw like really cool things they were doing for people as a very impressionable young little, pre-elementary school girl, right? So that sticks with you for life. And then one of the other inspirations I have is this gentleman, Ewell Sinks McClarty Jr., MD the third. I don't know if you read the chapter about him. He's in my Pet Goats and Pap Smears book, and which is a book of 101 of my best patient stories and healing adventures as a physician. But he was randomly assigned to me as my family medicine rotation as a third-year medical student. And this guy and I had like pretty much nothing in common politically, or probably anything at all. But the fact that he was like unabashedly, fearlessly telling the truth to his patients and me about medicine, and I just love like how he'd curse in front of patients. He was just his, what you would call real, raw, crazy nutcase self. And the thing is, his patients, he attracted a group of older white guys in cowboy hats with, smoking cigarettes. Like they were all together, kind of this wild, crazy Wild West crew of cowboys, in this little clinic. Drove me in his pickup truck here's an example, drove me in his pickup truck to do rounds in the hospital. We walk into a room and there's like a 30-year-old woman who has like, breast implants, he noticed, like when he did her exam. And he asks her, "Hey now, sugar, how long you had these damn things blown up that way?" And I was just like, that is so not PC. Look, because I went to Wellesley College, all women's college, and we're taught like, okay, you're a woman and not a girl and all these things. But even though like nothing he said was really probably philosophically aligned with the way I would necessarily do things, I absolutely love that within a sterile medical environment, this guy was willing to be the truest version of himself. And that actually worked with his patients. You know what I mean? This woman just answered the question.
Yeah.
About 2 years. Like that. That was just part of the history. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like dying right now. That's so ridiculous. And I have actually some examples of that too, but we won't dig into that. But that's awesome. And I do appreciate people who, even given the culture, are just themselves. It's really awesome to see that. And I love that you shared your inspirations. That's great. So with that being said, something I'd asked you before, and of course I'm sure you've provided these tips before, is what are some tips that you can leave the listeners today, the people that are listening to Dr. Pamela Wible? What are some things that they can learn from this conversation, takeaways that they can implement in their life?
So the one thing is to be very clear about what you want, because as soon as you decide what you want, it's likely to come true. Congratulations. Okay. Number 2 is you really need to have inspiring mentors. Surround yourself with, listen to Taylor's podcasts. Surround yourself with inspiring authors, videos, especially other people in your desired profession. If you want to be a neurosurgeon, for example, man, you need to do a rotation with this resident once she graduates that I just talked about, because there are some amazing, beautiful people in our profession, and we do not bond with each other enough and realize just the amount of inspiration that's right in front of you in your classmate, because you don't get to know them, right? Or in even your professor, even if your professor's having a bad day and they were sort of nasty to you or did a pimping routine, still within that person, there is something beautiful that they want to teach you. And I would encourage you to go out into the world and be a lifetime learner and extract inspiration and knowledge from everyone that passes your way. One thing I didn't mention, the people who probably inspire me the most are my patients, because I learned more from them than I ever learned really in medical school.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that was beautifully stated. And I really hope that everyone, including myself, will take that in, knowing what you want and getting inspiration from all of your patients and the great people around you. I just have to finish and say, Dr. Pamela Wible, it's been a true honor and pleasure to have you on the Happy Doc. I want everyone to check out her Ideal Medical Care website. I want everyone to check out the Do No Harm documentary. I want everyone to check out, all of the great materials that she shares. years. And it's been absolutely wonderful to have you as an inspiration in my life. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks, Taylor. You're the one that had me today. I'm so glad to be here. And I am so proud of you for doing this podcast. And I love the title. And I just love the guests that you've been having on. This is an amazing service that you're providing. And I just want people out there to know, like, Taylor did this as a fourth-year medical student. He launched his own business, as a fourth-year medical student. And so all of you, no matter what stage you're in your careers, whether you're just a pre-med in high school, you could literally launch a podcast, write a book. You can share the wealth of inspiration that you have with the world, and don't let anything stop you. And remember that all revolutions are led by the younger generation. So get going. We're waiting for you.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we want you to definitely subscribe to our social media channels. Check out The Happy Doc on Facebook, iTunes, Twitter, and Instagram. Please like, subscribe, share, and send us feedback. And please check out the website, www.thehappydoc.com. Again, we hope you enjoyed The Happy Doc, the voice of fulfilled physicians. Peace out.